you know I'm going to have the Dildo sign on this list. There's a lot of history in Newfoundland, and we talk about that all the time. There's a lot of reasons to get out and just explore the province. And I still haven't been to Labrador, so I can only really speak to the island portion of the province. And I have been around the island quite a bit, especially over the last couple of years, and I'm just blown away by what I see. Some of the things that you explore, it's rich. There's a lot to take in certain places. Like, these aren't places to just stop, take a picture, and leave. It's kind of like you feel something when you explore these places. You go somewhere like the Silent Witness Memorial just outside of Gander, or the Badger Monument. These are not places to just do a quick pass through, take a selfie, and go on. They're rich in history. There's a feeling that you can experience by actually coming up on one of these places. Or something like the Insectarium in Deer Lake, for example, or the Harvey family gravesite in Island, where like these places have a lot more to offer than just a quick selfie and then move on. But some of these places are basically built for that, and it's enough to literally roll up on the place, get out of your car, take a selfie, get back in your car, post it on Instagram. There's your mission for the day. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. I got a list of 40 places in Newfoundland that don't require much mental activity. Just put it on your list, get in your car, just make a note of some of these landmarks, and then off you go. So we're going to start in Mount Pearl. We're not starting in Mount Pearl. What are we going to do? Take a selfie in front of the KFC on Commonwealth Avenue? No, okay. Let's start on the west coast, the southwest coast to be specific, of the island, and we'll work our way back to St. John's. So the first place that you should stop, if you're coming to Newfoundland via ferry and you come through Port aux Basques, start your trip off by taking Highway 470 along the southwest coast in as far as Rose Blanche, which is the end of the road. Any further east that you're trying to go on the southwest coast, you're going to need to get on a ferry. And there are places that you can visit via ferry, but at least in your car, go as far as Rose Blanche and visit the amazing stone lighthouse. Coming back toward Highway 1 or the Trans-Canada Highway, you'll come back to Port aux Basques. My recommendation would be to stop by the I Love NL sign. After that, I would say drive up Highway 1 till you get to the detour towards Stephenville. Drive into Stephenville, and there's a cool American checkpoint that was in service back when the Americans were actually sort of running Stephenville and going towards the military bases. They had a checkpoint on a bridge that takes you in towards where the bases were. They still have that checkpoint set up with a dummy sort of pretending to stop cars and check your credentials before proceeding, but it's kind of a cool place to take a quick picture. The Port au Port Peninsula has a couple of really cool points of interest, but one that's not too far from the town of Stephenville is the big wooden church, the Our Lady of Mercy Church in Port au Port. It's one of the biggest wooden structures in the province that's still standing. Beautiful church. I'm not sure what denomination is. It's not really important to me, but it's a nice place to take a detour if you've already headed in towards Stephenville and the Port au Port Peninsula. From there, you head north a little bit more towards Corner Brook. Corner Brook being the second city of Newfoundland. There are quite a few things that you can see around the city of Corner Brook. My recommendation is one of those obvious ones. It's the Corner Brook sign. The Corner Brook sign is located on West Street, kind of like in a town square looking portion of the city. They say that each letter tells a story, and it does. It's just a really nice, colorful sign with each letter having a depiction of some event or some person that's relevant to the city of Corner Brook on it. Heading up past Corner Brook, there will be a detour that you'll take beyond Highway 1 that'll take you up the Viking Trail. You drive up the Grossmore, and this is one of the most beautiful places on the planet. There's so much to see. I'm trying to make this video as concise as I can, so I'm picking one place. My favorite place that I experienced in the park, it's one of the most obvious places, is Western Brook Pond. It's the fjords there. I was only there in the winter time. You can go in the summertime and actually take a boat into the fjords, or you can take a fairly long hike up and get that iconic shot of the fjords. Even just standing on the bridge by the landing where the dock is, where that boat comes from, and getting a picture of the fjords from there, it's absolutely beautiful. Coming back from Grossmore, and you'll pass Deer Lake again. Deer Lake is kind of on that corner where the Viking Trail starts. And there's another I Love NL sign in Deer Lake right at the airport. Just one of those cool little shots that you can get. Now, I cannot recommend places that I haven't been to. I haven't laid eyes on Lansom Meadows myself or any of the beautiful towns around Notre Dame Bay. I only know what I know from pictures and from the internet, so you can kind of see that for yourself by doing the same types of searches. But please, if you have any tips for me to visit when I get around to visiting these places, please let me know. So with that said, we're skipping along the Trans-Canada Highway quite a bit, going from Deer Lake all the way through to Gander. We're talking about like Instagram-worthy shots. The Gander Airport would be a great place to go for a shot because there is the old international waiting area that is fixed up and beautiful, and it has the, as far as I remember, the first escalator in Newfoundland and Labrador. It looks like an airport from the movies from, you know, the 1950s or 60s, because back in those days, Gander was a very important airport. So the importance of that place is kind of being preserved through a couple of coats of paint, but it's the escalator that really caught my eye. Pretty much due north of Gander is Fogo, Twillingate, and Morton's Harbor. For number 9 on my list, I'm kind of combining elements of all 3 towns to say all around the circle, get a shot of the signage in these 3 communities, and that can be considered your activity for the day. Now, if you're all the way up around New World Island and you're in Fogo Island, getting over to the town of Joe Bat's Arm and getting a shot with the beautiful Fogo Island Inn behind you is a great idea. Coming back down from New World Island, the Twillingate area, Fogo Island, all those places, coming back towards the highway, rather than coming straight down, passing through Gander again, I would recommend taking the highway that takes you through Musgrave Harbor, Lumsden, New West Valley. Lots to see there. Particularly making a stop at the most beautiful beach, in my opinion, in Newfoundland. That's Lumsden Beach. Now, I haven't been to Burgeo, another one of those places that I can't recommend because I haven't seen it, but I hear it's just an amazing beach. But I haven't been there. I have been to Lumsden Beach, so that's my pick as the most beautiful beach. Get a shot of yet another town sign, giant colorful letters, the Lumsden sign. Now, driving around the northeast coast, you're taking Highway 330. When you actually come back to the Trans-Canada Highway, you're going to hit Gambo. If you're coming out of Gambo and you're turning onto the highway, I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, you have to stop and get a shot with Joey Smallwood's head on the big sign at Joey's Lookout. I mentioned how weird of a man he was, how polarizing he was in Newfoundland history. I think he was kind of an idiot, but he liked himself a lot, so he made sure that he made his mark in Newfoundland with this sign. I don't know what to say about it, but stop and get a shot with it because it's good for a chuckle if nothing else. And the Bonavista Peninsula is one of my favorite places in the islands, super rich with history. I'm only going to hit on a couple because there's just too many. You can do a whole video of 40 spots on the Bonavista Peninsula alone. But the first place that I would recommend stopping at driving up would be Champneys West. Now, you may wonder why I'm skipping over Trinity and skipping over Port Rexton. It's like I said, there's just so many places I have to pick and choose. But Champneys West, down by the little colorful dock, it makes for a beautiful photo. Do you mind if I get you in a shot? Yeah. Thanks. I'm all over the world. You'll come up on Port Union about a half an hour or so later. Very, very important town in the history of Newfoundland, and a very unique town. It was union built. When they say it's the only union built town in the country, there is still quite a few buildings that exist from the planned town's earliest days. Make sure you take a stop at the town of Port Union before traveling further north on the Bonavista Peninsula. After Port Union, before you get to the town of Bonavista itself, there's a couple of really important points of interest in my opinion. There's the town of Elliston. They have the Sealers Museum, which is, I believe, a place that, as a Newfoundlander, it deserves a little bit more attention than just getting out of your car and taking a selfie. You can travel along the coast, basically that's still in the town of Elliston, to the puffin habitat. And I don't know if it's only on nice days, but when I was there, it was a beautiful day, and it absolutely blew my mind to see the puffins in their natural habitat. It was an amazing experience. And again, getting closer to the town of Bonavista, number 16 on my destination list is Spiller's Cove. You're getting closer to the town of Bonavista, but you're still outside. There's a sea stack that's pretty famous that you gotta lay your eyes on to really get the full impact of how beautiful it is. Just beyond there would be number 17, the Dungeon. The Dungeon is a cool natural land formation, much like Spiller's Cove is. The formation came about because of erosion and the sea's movement, and it's expected to continue to erode. So one day it might be gone, but it's still there now. Now, once you're at the Dungeon, you're basically in the town of Bonavista. The actual town is a little bit further away, but you're basically in the town. Number 18 is Bonavista. I know I've said this about Trinity and Port Rexton, like there's just so many places I can't pick. With Bonavista, there's so many places that I'm just gonna say, go to the town of Bonavista and take your pick there. You have the lighthouse, you have the Ryan premises, you have just the architecture of the houses that are there, and the amount of effort that people in Bonavista have put in to restore old abandoned homes and rejuvenating the town through businesses and through all kinds of different efforts. Bonavista is amazing. It's rich and deserves more than just a simple picture, but if you're actually looking for a destination to get out and Instagram your trip, Bonavista is just a wealth of potential selfies. But basically coming back down the Bonavista Peninsula towards Highway 1 or Trans-Canada Highway again, you have the Burin Peninsula. The Burin Peninsula is another rich, beautiful peninsula with a lot of history and a lot of things to see. Early on the road, you'll come across Doreen's Snack Bar. I hope it's still something that exists. There's a cute little roadside, kind of like a food truck, but more like just a roadside stand. It was closed when we went there, but it just looked nice, and they have one of those big, huge green lawn chairs. So I got Mother to sit in one. I took a funny picture with her, sort of swinging her legs, with traffic going by. It was just a nice place to get out of your car and stretch a little bit. Further down the Burin Peninsula is Smuggler's Cove, in the town of, just outside the town of Burin. I guess it's technically in the town of Burin, but it's kind of secluded off on its own. Another one of these places that it definitely deserves more than just like drive, get out, take a picture, off you go. Definitely a destination. It's worth actually driving from St. John's just to go to this place for the food alone and just for the atmosphere. But if you go out into the Old West town, definitely get some great opportunities to take some cool pictures. So it can be a simple trip to just go down for that purpose, but if you go all the way down there, like I said, it can be a standalone trip. Take some time and actually enjoy the place for what it is. Driving around the boot, let's see the beautiful town of Grand Bank. In the town of Grand Bank, my favorite things that I came across were a couple of wooden cutouts. There's it looked like a puffin eating a codfish, and another one basically a fisherman with a bucket of salt beef. Well, they're standing on a bucket of salt beef, actually. Basically what we've done so far is taken a fairly linear route. We kind of scooted off a little bit to go to Gros Morne. The Bonavista Peninsula obviously is a detour, the Burin Peninsula is a detour, but coming back onto the highway at Goobies, I want you to stop and see Morris the Moose at Goobies. One of those corny little highway mascots that you'll see in different places. Different towns around Canada have like the big whatever. I think Sudbury has a big nickel. There's a big goose in I think it's Wawa, Ontario. At Goobies, you have Morris the Moose. Everything that I'm mentioning here is optional, but if you wanted to go to Placentia, it's a little bit out of your way if you're heading back to town. And Placentia has the lift bridge that it's just unique for Newfoundland and Labrador. You know, you got a beautiful town and it's a really flat town, a very different sort of landscape compared to what you're used to seeing probably in Newfoundland, and then this bridge really stands out because of the flatness of the town itself, and then there's hills all around, so it just really stands out. Placentia's on the Avalon Peninsula, and once you're on the Avalon, there's a lot of history and there's a lot of things to see. It's also home to Dildo. What can we say about Dildo? The town is beautiful. The Dildo Dory is a nice restaurant with really good food, but of course the prime reason to visit Dildo on a quick Instagram trip would be to get a shot with the Dildo sign. A little north of Dildo is the beautiful town of Cavendish. You may have seen the colorful fishing sheds at Cavendish Beach before. I really like them. I don't know why. There's not a whole lot to them, but the location's beautiful and the little uniformly shaped colorful sheds. It's a little treat. You're going to end up driving up to a couple of other places on this list in a little while. Why not just take a quick stop in Cavendish and get a shot with those fishing sheds? Driving up past Cavendish on the Bay de Verde Peninsula, you're going to drive past the Hearts communities. Hearts Delight, Hearts Desire, Hearts Content. Hearts Content is a very significant town because of the history it has with communications around the world, it being the site of the first transatlantic cable coming across the Atlantic Ocean and landing in Hearts Content. Number 26 on this list is the hearts signs, basically for all the towns, because they're one after another. And number 27 would be to actually stop in Heart's Content and see the cable station and the monument to that landing of the transatlantic cable. Heart's Content is kind of like halfway up the Bay de Verde Peninsula, and I strongly recommend paying a visit to Old Perlican and the town of Bay de Verde if you have a chance. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to cut across the peninsula slightly sort of southeast on Highway 74 and kind of come straight into the other side. Before you get to Carbonear, you're going to hit the town of Victoria. The town of Victoria is home to the Newfoundland Heritage Village. The Heritage Village was actually the site of an actual prisoner of war camp in World War II. Now they have a bunch of structures set up that model an old Heritage Village. The whole Heritage Village is pretty cool, but the coolest part, in my opinion, was the animals. And they have Jack the pony, and Jack was a little bit shy when we were there, but basically pretty friendly. So go to the Heritage Village in Victoria, Newfoundland, and go see Jack the pony. Harbor Grace is number 29 on my list. There's a park in Harbor Grace where you actually can see the SS Kyle, you can see the statue of Amelia Earhart, and you can see the model plane that doesn't fly anymore, but it's there in honor of Amelia. So all three of these items kind of combine to create item number 29. They're all right next to each other, so you can definitely get a nice photo in Harbor Grace at that site. Number 30 on the list is the town of Brigus. So you're heading closer to town. Brigus is another very, very historically significant town in Newfoundland. Captain Bob Bartlett is born and raised in Brigus and left his mark on history through his travels as a sea captain. You have the Bob Bartlett Memorial at the Brigus Tunnel. So you have your pick. You can use both, you can take one or the other, but that's my number 30 item, the town of Brigus. Number 31, Conception Harbor. On that route coming back, the old highway coming through Conception Bay Center. The SS Kyle that ran aground in Harbor Grace is very famous. There's also the wrecks of the boats in Conception Harbor are really a sight to behold. Beyond Conception Harbor, you have Avondale. You have the old train station, which is basically a museum right now. It's been maintained really well considering the trains came out of Newfoundland in 1988, but it's a cute little spot on your way back to town to stop and visit. After Avondale, we're getting really close to town. We're basically in town. We're in CBS now. Manuals in particular, you have Berg's. As a child, we used to go to Berg's fairly often in the summer, and I love it. We used to get waffle cones with soft serve back in the day, but they have a lot more to offer now than I probably ever had. As I mentioned with Placentia, it's a little bit off of the linear path that we've been taking for much of this journey all the way from Rose Blanche towards St. John's. There's one more stop that's kind of out of your way, but highly recommended to go. It's Fairyland, and in Fairyland you have the Lighthouse Picnic. So if you have the time, head out to Fairyland, go to the Lighthouse, and I recommend actually booking one of those picnics, but even if it's just a quick walk out to see the lighthouse and see the coast of Fairyland, I think you'll be happy with that. In the city of St. John's itself, there's so much that you can do, so much that you can see. The first place that I, of course, will mention would be Cabot Tower. Cabot Tower sits on top of Signal Hill. It's St. John's iconic building that overlooks downtown, so you can't really miss it. That's at the top of Signal Hill. Halfway down, you have the Battery Lookout. Battery Lookout's cool because you get a slightly different vantage point of downtown. Most people go all the way to the top and look down. Battery Lookout is a little bit more in line with it, so the buildings look closer, they look a bit bigger, it's kind of cool. But at the Battery Lookout, my favorite place to get a picture is the little heart-shaped cutout on the wooden fences that are there. At the bottom of Signal Hill Road, instead of heading towards downtown, you can head out towards Kitty Vitty. And Kitty Vitty is one of those places where there's so much beauty, so many things to see and take pictures of. But one of the things that is kind of under the radar is the Christ Church. It's, I believe, an interdenominational church. I believe it's still, services are still offered there. But it is one of the oldest standing buildings still remaining in St. John's. There's been significant work done over the years, so it's not original by any means. But it was first built, I believe, in the 1830s. Finally getting into the downtown core of Old St. John's, of course, is Jelly Bean Row. And you have your pick of so many different streets and areas of the old row houses that exist that have been maintained and upgraded and painted, and you can take your pick of which section of Jelly Bean Row you'd like to take your Instagram shot of. My recommendation would be Kings Road. It's one of the more famous stretches of Jelly Bean Row. It's just the specific colors of these houses pique my interest more than other places. And bonus points go to, before it goes or it changes, you still can take a picture of moo-moos with the colorful houses down below. Number 39, the second last item, is of course Fish and Chips Row. I have the Fish and Chips video that I did recently. I'll put the link in the description if you wanted to check that out, where I went around town to all of the main fish and chips centric restaurants and shared some thoughts that I had about each one. Leo's earned the top prize on that video, and it exists on Fish and Chips Row. Fish and Chips Row is a piece of St. John's that everybody who's visiting at least should experience. I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anybody, but location number 40 on this list is Cape Spear. It's the most easterly point in all of North America. And when you know that you're standing on the easternmost point of the continent, it just kind of feels cool. Some of the places around Newfoundland that I've mentioned in some of these other videos that touch on sort of like tourism hotspots that I recommend everybody see, some of these places are not what I would call Instagram worthy. They deserve a little bit more respect than simply driving, getting out of your car and taking a selfie there, right? There's, you know, some real history that deserves some respect in some of these places. And not to say that the places that are on this list don't deserve respect, but they're kind of fun. They're just sort of easy places to check off of the list and get a funny picture with. If there's any places that I missed that are just burning a hole in your brain right now, let me know where I'm missing the mark. I'd like to actually add to the list, especially in places where I haven't been. I mentioned Burgeo and the beach there. I mentioned Notre Dame Bay. I mentioned the Northern Peninsula. But what else am I missing? Please let me know.